2020 was a great year for animation. Everything else, terrible. We lost a year of our lives, unless you're an introvert, and literally nothing has changed. But if you look at the animated side of things, pretty stellar year. We had a plethora of amazing new shows start, while others gracefully took their final bow. If you told me that 2020 would have had some of my all-time favorite cartoons, I would have called you a liar. But the fact remains, it did. This is something that we need to celebrate, regardless of the complete catastrophe the rest of our lives may be. So, digging through my backlog of animated gems, I'm bringing you my top 10 animated shows of 2020. This list will exclude anime and shows I haven't seen. Apologies to Soul, you just came way too late in the year for me to add you and re-edit this video. But without further ado, let's get this party started. Number 10, Steven Universe Future. This one may come as a surprise, seeing as I have talked a lot of shit about this show, and even declared that it failed me personally. But after a bit of time, people's opinions can change. Mine didn't, but it's still possible. Future is meant to be the original show's coda, taking time to address the unresolved issues and plot threads, while also deconstructing the child protagonist trope and building to Steven's emotional collapse. For the most part, I believe that it handles all this adequately. Steven Universe has always been a show with big highs with long plateaus in between. Future falls into a similar trap, which is a shame because I love what this show is trying to say about being honest with your feelings, growing apart from your friends, and how people will try their best but still not do the best thing for you. It's a lot of neat ideas. However, the episodes that say something are separated by the ones that aren't nearly as good, or say something so painfully obvious that it didn't need repeating. What truly keeps this show from being higher on this list though, is the pacing. It telegraphs hard that this season will end with Steven having a mental breakdown, and every episode in some small way builds to that. Except, to get to that low, they have to write out Steven's entire support structure. The gems ignore Steven after he created a gossip-spewing monster, Peridot does nothing after seeing Steven's PTSD dreams, and his dad is revealed to be an anti-control hippie who never took Steven to a hospital and kept him out of school because he was part gem, and in his mind, better than all of that. Each of these things on their own would be annoying. But wrapped together, I could never shake that feeling that the hand of the writers railroading the story to a conclusion which made the experience frustrating. The highs were still incredible, but it's a show that I will only rewatch scenes. But Future takes number 10 spot based on the quality of those scenes and its influence overall. Future isn't the show for me, but I'm sure it's touched many of you, and I'll never take that away from anyone. Though as much as I hate the Townie episodes in Universe, there is one show that did manage to pull them off. Number 9, Hilda Season 2. Guys, I love Hilda so much. Hilda is a story of a young girl who meets with magical creatures from Norse folklore. Trolls, Nissa, teens. Hilda remains one of the coziest things I've ever watched. Its color palette is just so soothing. I could watch the show for the backgrounds alone. The strong supporting cast only got more interesting with Season 2. I can happily say that Season 2 was a natural progression for the show, with a notable increase in the danger and violence that never broke the story's picture book aesthetic.
Try again.
Okay, yeah. Episode 4 is a bloodbath, but in a fun way. This season raises the personal stakes, putting Hilda and her mom into conflict as the increased danger of Hilda's adventures, making her mother more worried and her concerns more valid. This is perfect because many shows try to do the concerned parent trying to limit the child adventurer, and it always comes off as forced or needless, as the kids usually have the situation pretty well in hand. But this season drives home just how much peril Hilda puts herself in regularly. Hilda's attempts to lie and avoid the subject only push them further apart, till they finally come to an understanding that feels natural and earned. There's even a recurring motif of jumping appearing throughout the show that highlights the nature of each character. Hilda is confidently leaping over any obstacle, and this borders on recklessness. Frida is making similar jumps, but the more analytical eye. David is too scared to make the jump, and Hilda's mom chooses to pick safer options, not out of fear, but out of concern for her child's safety. The show is filled with little character details like this, and goes to show how tight the writing in this series is. As far as I'm concerned, this show has no significant flaws. The only thing keeping it from being higher on this list is that for as great as I think the show is, each episode is a small tale in a small world. It's not reaching new heights, but it is masterfully gliding at a comfortable one. And for me, that works. Because not every show needs to be the next Avatar or Gravity Falls. Big swings aren't required to make a great show, and Hilda is a perfect example of that. Now, onto a show that's only here because its big hits landed better than its misses. Number 8, Castlevania Season 3. Castlevania was easily one of my most anticipated shows of the year. Did it meet those expectations? Mostly. Castlevania picks up a few months after Season 2 ended, continuing the stories of the heroes and villains from Season 2. What I loved about this season was how it progresses each of the characters in new directions. Trevor and Sypha are dating and strong contenders for the best battle couple, while one of last season's antagonists, Isaac, is on a journey of revenge and introspection, with action scenes that surpass the already fantastic fight choreography we got last season. But as I've already alluded to, this show misses almost as much as it hits. Season 2 was divided between two storylines, while 3 has 5 of wildly different quality, with Isaac easily having the best of these storylines and Alucard getting the worst, with everything in between being a mixed bag of slow build-up followed by extraordinary climaxes that don't matter when it's revealed that this has all been the setup for the next season. I'll go through each of these storylines individually because you need to look at these on their own, starting with Isaac, who again is phenomenal. Warren Ellis's ability to write witty and intense dialogue is on full display here, with not a single scene being anything other than enthralling. Next is Trevor and Sypha, which between the fun couple dynamic and the heart-pounding action scenes is good. It takes a while, even though I find the final twist to be pointlessly dark to force an emotional low. I guess after them would be Hector and the vampire housewives of Styria. The wives are great, but I really can't say that I enjoyed Hector's arc. A season being built up of him getting played doesn't do anything for me. I hope he gets his revenge. That's all I'm interested in. It's got a few things I like, but the build-up and payoff are frustrating. Close to the bottom is Saint Germain, who you could mix with Trevor and Sypha, but it stands on its own till the end. Despite the fact that I find Germain to be an entertaining character, I didn't get enough motivation out of him to hold my interest. Even when we got it, I still just didn't care. And at the very bottom is Alucard and his porn tag companions. This is where all the problems in the story are at its worst. Even though the story is supposed to occur in a few months, there is no indication that the time span was that long, with it feeling like 2 weeks at most. This causes the story to feel repetitive, characters' anger seeming unjustified, with everything being forgettable except the climax and that fantastic final line. All this season was set up, but this was the sole storyline where this feels apparent, with an ending that just doesn't feel earned, existing solely to justify whatever they're gonna do in Season 4. The peaks of this season are high, but so are the valleys, and I feel pretty generous giving this season the number 8 spot. That doesn't mean the next period piece on this list didn't earn its place. Number 7, Kibo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. Kibo first came out in 2020 and concluded with its 3rd season in 2020. Holy that is a lot of show. Like other shows dream of having this quality versus release ratio. Clocking in at an even 30 episodes, Kibo tells the story of Kipo Oak, a human in the post-apocalypse looking for her dad and saving the world. One of the first things that hooked me into Kibo is the music. This show's soundtrack incorporates dozens of different songs of various genres and styles, elevating the scenes without overshadowing them. But by far, the 2 best parts of the show are Kibo and the main villain, Scarlet-Mange. Kibo should be a case study on how to write a naive, optimistic character because she does it so well, and the majority of people that fall into this trope are agonizing to watch. It's frustrating to see people make these apparent mistakes and then gasp when things don't work out for them while not learning a damn thing. Kibo, in contrast, she is a naive person. She always tries to see the best in people. She pushes those around her to be their best selves. Does this always work? No, but just because she wants that golden ending, she's also smart enough to realize that this won't always be the case and plans accordingly. Even when the show teases Kibo going darker and using force to solve her problems, the narrative points out, while she can, it won't end the cycle of violence. And to me, this really makes her a fulfilling character because we see someone who is optimistic, who is positive, try to be the best person, get knocked down for it, then decide no, she's gonna keep trying anyway. And I find that so admirable. On the other side of the coin, we have Scarlemagne. This monkey is just great. He's what you get when you cross Amadeus with the Joker, who you come to understand as the show progresses. You empathize with him. You disagree with what he's doing, but you come to understand why he's doing it. The rest of the cast is pretty solid, but suffers from not being the main character-itis. Wolf is excellent, but after season 1, she's the badass who always has Kibo's back. Benson is another fun character who makes a cute couple with his boyfriend, but besides being the occasional emotional support, doesn't have anything going on. The closest thing he has to an arc is asking his boyfriend to prom, and the rest of the main cast has the same issue. Overall, I'd call Kibo a great series, with lots of strengths, but its flaws are noticeable. The best animation in the show is almost all in the first season, while the best character drama is in the second. The third wraps up the show in a satisfying way, but doesn't utilize its supporting cast effectively, and the villain is just lame. But again, we had 3 seasons in a year. That's a huge feat, and it more than earns a spot on this list. Now, if we can move on to number 6, which is just going to be my extended ranting. Number 6, Wolfwalkers. Cartoon Saloon is my favorite animation studio. Hands down, I have never watched one of their films and not cried or been in awe of its beauty. Wolfwalkers continues this trend and was easily my favorite animated movie of the year. Taking place in medieval Ireland, the story follows a hunter's daughter who befriends a young girl who is a wolfwalker. Werewolf-like creatures that protect the forest and become wolves in their sleep. Like all of Saloon's stories, Wolfwalker is a visual feast, with incredible detail being put into every frame. They'll often break perspective, showing the city loom over the woods, creating this sense of foreboding as it slowly creeps to the natural world, drawn in gray, rigid blocks reflecting its oppressive nature and lack of soul. And this is just so apparent when it's reflected with the woods, which are illustrated in flowing spirals and lush colors. Encourage everyone to go see. While having an overt environmental message, it conveys that mostly through subtext and visuals. Wolfwalker's plot isn't groundbreaking by any means. I found the film's main antagonist to be Frollo without hellfire or interest. The father-daughter conflict also relied a bit too much on the parent not listening to the kid cliche. That is always a frustrating drag. The climax, a bit too long, but these are my only complaints. Wolfwalkers is an experience that I could easily see myself revisiting for the rest of my life. There are very few pieces of media that I can say that about. Like, I almost bought Apple TV to watch this. Almost. The fact that I'd even consider it is a testament to its quality, and I encourage everyone to get out there and use that free trial. And while I've hyped up Wolfwalkers because of my own not-so-small biases, this next show on the list is more of the same. But before that, let me make a quick honorable mention because these two are joined at the hip discussion-wise. Honorable mention, The Owl House. Yeah, that's right, The Owl House didn't make it onto this list, and it hurts to say, because I love The Owl House. I like the cartoon take on an isekai with a young teen adopted by a foxy old witch and Alex Hirsch. I love all of these characters, but making this list I realized something. More than anything, I love Owl House's potential. As fun as it is, this show reeks of growing pains, with this first season being world building and establishing characters going into the next season. Think the exam arc from Hunter x Hunter. It walks a good walk, but I'm still waiting for it to run. Now, my number 5, on the other hand, has been running, and it has been doing so ever since it got out of the gate. Yet all of you owl-sucking shills have been sleeping on the greatness that is Amphibia. Amphibia is the best fucking show on Disney right now, and most of you should be ashamed for not watching it. The ratio of Owl House to Amphibia videos on YouTube is like 20-1, and that is not okay. Yes, I haven't done one yet. Shut up, I'm making up for lost time. Amphibia is also the story of a teen girl getting lost in a magical new world, but instead of witches and magic, it's frogs and insects. But what it lacks in an eye-catching premise, it more than makes up for in the only thing that matters. Execution. From the first episode, this show lays its cards on the table. It's a fun comedy with the main narrative staying firmly in the background. What makes Amphibia great is its writing. The main cast are all national treasures. Their banter is so fun that it makes every adventure or mishap a delight. In comparison, other shows, they try to keep adding new characters and building on new dynamics. Amphibia focuses primarily on a core cast: Anne, Twig, Polly, and Hop Pop. One episode is all you need to understand who they are as a person, and much of the comedy comes from watching these characters bounce off of one another. This is what Amphibia excels at. Easily defined characters, strong comedy. You can pair up any two characters and you will get comedy gold. Anne, voiced by Disney alum Brenda Song from Sweet Life, is spunky fun, with just the right bit of crazy. I find Anne fascinating because unlike most leads who tend to be balls of chaotic good, she was not that great of a person in the real world. The inciting incident that got her here was that she stole a box from an antique shop. But this doesn't make her any less of a good person, only a more complicated one. She has people in her life that made her a worse person. She doesn't always do the right thing and can be a bad influence on those around her. But that only makes her more interesting and creates new opportunities in the story. And I can give this praise to most of the cast. Twig is a good kid who's a bit of a troublemaker. Polly is just dynamite in a bucket and is one of my favorite characters of the year. While Hop Pop is an old timer whose comedy comes from him not being old, but how he acts and jives with his 3 rambunctious kids. Amphibia is full of great characters and nifty details. While the show has been hinting about telling a bigger story in its 3rd and final season, unlike binge shows like Kibo, Amphibia is episodic, with each episode having its own strengths and weaknesses. It may seem like a mid-2000s Disney comedy, I assure you it is, but one that is perfectly tuned to tickle your funny bone and keep you coming back every week for more. I'm gonna miss this show when it's gone, and I hope it gets the respect that it deserves. Buckle up, folks, because I am just as confused as you are on this one. Number 4, Midnight Gospel. Midnight Gospel was created by Pendleton Ward of Adventure Time fame and Duncan Trussell, comedian and podcaster. This is important because this show is honestly just as trippy conceptually as it is in practice. The show's plot is about Clancy, who uses a bootleg dimension creator to visit new places and interview people for his podcast, covering topics from psychedelic drugs to mysticism to Eastern philosophy. Midnight Gospel presents fascinating discussions about the nature of life and how people live in an uncertain world. Now, these cartoon space casts use audio from Duncan's actual podcast, which creates a dilemma, as you now have to ask yourself, why would I watch this when the full uncut story is just waiting to be half listened to? Well, the answer is this. Midnight Gospel is as much a visual experience as it is an audio one. Far from being a fun little segue into the conversations themselves, the animation reflects what the characters are talking about, the beliefs of each character. We can understand what they're talking about. We don't have this accompanying visual to give us this greater understanding of their true meaning. The beauty of Midnight Gospel is how it takes you by the hand, walks you through the metaphysical discussions being had by its characters, with visuals close to what I assume an acid trip feels like. The story is both serene and horrifying, just as people have to make peace with their own deaths. I don't think I've seen anything quite like the Midnight Gospel. It doesn't follow any of your typical storyline conventions, and I think that's what's made it so engrossing. This show isn't for everyone, but I think everyone should at least give it a try. Well, I didn't make a transition for this one, but this was the gayest year in animation ever, which makes this next one just perfect. Number 3, Shira and the Princesses of Power. Shira and the Princesses of Whatever is a phenomenal show, and I resent that it took me spiting neckbeard YouTubers to watch it, because wow, this show just rocks. Yeah, the fights kinda suck, the time frame of the story isn't clear, and this horse can go fuck off, but I'm not watching this for any of that. I'm watching for the characters. Because after 4 seasons, I am so invested in my ships that I can't turn away. I already have plenty of videos on why you should watch Shira, so I won't repeat myself here. It's a show about confused gay teens saving the universe from Palpatine with dreads using the power of love. Season 5 was everything I wanted in an ending, and if you watch the show, you may not like all of it, but I'll guarantee you'll find at least one character to fall in love with. Next on my list is a show that no one should be surprised to see, but it being obvious just proves how great Infinity Train Season 3 is. Infinity Train is one of the most unique shows to come out in recent memory. Rather than building up a central main cast, each season is dedicated to a core group of characters who have to undergo character development to leave the train. Season 1 was our introduction to Tulip, who met a mere copy of herself who would go on to be the main character of Season 2, while the third focuses on the leaders of a child cult who briefly appear in the second season. This was a great choice, because our previous teen protagonists, just needed to overcome their emotional issues. Grace and Simon are near adults who came to the train as children, coming to see it as their own personal playground, a reward where they are encouraged to do bad things to raise their number, and seeing the train's denizens as video game NPCs, creatures that only can mimic emotion, giving them leeway to abuse them without guilt. Grace and Simon aren't good people, and they emotionally manipulate children to be in their army. This makes the season's journey to help them change so interesting, because they have things that they need to make up for, overcoming years spent living a toxic lifestyle. This show makes the bold choice of not giving us all the answers. They did horrible things, learned how much they can or can't change. Infinity Train has always been a show that thrives on atmospheric storytelling. Everything from the bizarre interiors to the monolithic trains running forever on a Martian landscape sucks you into the world, never letting you get entirely comfortable. The synth soundtrack easily stands as one of the best, that feels at once retro, alien, and beautiful. It breaks my heart that this show hasn't been picked up for another season, because in my mind, it stands head and shoulders above most of its contemporaries, with a story that genuinely only it can tell. So I'd recommend that everyone head over to HBO Max to give it a watch, and make a lot of noise demanding the next season, because some shows are worth fighting for. Before I give you the number one pick for this year, I think it's only fair to let in some of the honorable mentions. Starting with DuckTales Season 3, the best show you're not watching. Look, this show, I fall on and off more than my doctor would recommend. But even then, the show is excellent with a fantastic ensemble, creative writing, and plenty of nostalgia for those who remember the original. It may not be your first choice, but I guarantee you'll enjoy it. Next up is Rise of the TMNT. If I had watched this show, this would be my top 5. Because well, look at this.
But you will not.
This show's action is fire. Like, oh my god, the fights are just fast, powerful, kinetic, logic and reason have no place here. The rule of cool is king. While this is certainly not my favorite interpretation of the characters, I don't care. That's not why I'm here. The comedy keeps me entertained till the next action set piece, and that's all I'm asking for. Check it out and you'll fucking love it. Carmen Sandiego Season 3 is a gorgeous show that left me wanting more, just not in a good way. This season was 5 episodes long, and honestly, it just wasn't enough. While it makes for a healthy continuation of the previous series, it fails to elevate it. While it doesn't do anything wrong, Carmen Sandiego can't steal a spot on this list. Close enough. If you're in your 20s, this show was made for you. Produced by the same guy that gave us Regular Show, which still holds up as one of the better Cartoon Network shows. And Close Enough is pretty much more of that, and I'd have it no other way. If you want to have more of those good times, check out Adventure Time Distant Lands Obsidian. I didn't care for the BMO special, but this is what I wanted. Seeing Bubblegum and Marceline be a couple while also learning more about their past is all I wanted out of these Adventure Time OVAs. If you like Adventure Time, you have to watch it. Next up, 1/3 of Star Wars Clone Wars Season 7. This was the finale that I always wanted, and a better conclusion to the prequels than the Revenge of the Sith. Sam Witwer's Maul kills it. Ahsoka is great. The action scenes are some of the best in the series. The only thing keeping it from claiming a spot on this list is that as other shows have highs and lows, the first 2/3 of this season are spin-off bait and a bad Clone Wars story. If it were just the last third, I'd probably switch it out with Castlevania, but I do not care about anything outside the Mandalore storyline. And I've waited a long time to see this series, I couldn't give it a spot on this list. I liked it, but if 2/3 of a show are bad, it doesn't get a passing grade. The ending's still phenomenal though. And finally, Golden Kamuy. Breaking my own no anime rule for this one, but I have to bring up this weird ass show. It's a historical comedy action show about people suffering from PTSD, with 70% of its runtime being spent on cooking. Check this one out at your own risk. I love it, but it's not for everyone. But if you can accept the insanity, you will have a great time. But that's enough about the honorable mentions, because there is only one show deserving of the top spot. When I first made this list, I fought with myself over whether to give it to Shira or Infinity Train. But then while going through the cartoons that came out this year, I had that moment all of us have had when I realized, holy shit, that happened this year? As soon as I realized that the second season came out in 2020, I knew it deserved the top spot, and that show is...
My fellow whites, let's raise a glass to this pyramid of money, the foundation of which was built upon our favorite pastime, fucking the poor!
Party's over, you pieces of shit!
For the longest time, I did not like Harley Quinn. She was fine in the animated series. The amount of attention she got baffled me. What was so interesting about the token female created to no homo the gayest relationship in comics? I don't get why she was in every story. I didn't get why she was married to Poison Ivy. Then I watched the show, and I get it now. Harley Quinn is easily the thing I enjoyed watching the most. While I may have rewatched Shira and Infinity Train once or twice, I've replayed Harley Quinn at least 8 times and about to start a 9th. It's the funniest show out there right now, and despite its copious amounts of violence, has a lot of heart to it. You learn to love these characters, or at the very least enjoy them. It's incredible how in a show centered around superpowered beings and monsters, the characters have never been more relatable or human. Think of it as an animated sitcom, but with good comedy, and without the reset button. When shit happens, they run with it. Villain dies, yeah, his ass ain't coming back. City gets destroyed, next episode, yeah, it's still busted, making this show just so fun to watch just for those little bits of continuity. Last season was the story of Harley Quinn getting over the Joker, realizing how toxic the relationship was, both in how he treated her and how she defined herself through him. Season 2 focuses more on the supporting cast and Harley's relationship with them, as she tries to figure out who she is and what she wants, with no small amount of drama coming from Kite Man, a character you come to love, and his engagement to Poison Ivy, Harley's best friend, life coach, and my queen. I won't spoil how the story ends, but it is an explosive, satisfying ending that neatly ties up most of the story's loose ends. And just gotta say it, this show's cast is stacked. There isn't a bad voice in the batch. Kaylee Kuso is fantastic as Harley, and thankfully not trying to mimic Arlene Sorkin, instead bringing her own charm to the role. Lake Bell is perfect as the sarcastic Poison Ivy, and is probably the best fit for the role I've ever seen. And you can't talk about this cast without bringing up Alan Tudyk, whose portrayal of the Joker is perfect for this show's interpretation of the character. He's more petty, vindictive asshole than giggling mass murderer, which he's still a mass murderer, but that's not what the show focuses on. Also, props to James Adomian. His Bane is a scene stealer.
I'm going to blow up this bar mitzvah.
I can't tell you enough to watch this show. It is just the thing that has brought me the most joy in 2020, and I feel like that alone gives it my top spot. This has been my top 10 list of the cartoons that came out in 2020. Maybe you agree with it? Perhaps you think it was shit. Go and tell me what you thought were the real top 10 cartoons of 2020. Or go stalk me on social media to yell at me in person. I promise to read all your texts before blocking you. This has been my personal opinion, and I stand by it. And if you enjoyed my video and want to help me out, stand by me as I claw my way out of algorithm hell. Like, share, and subscribe. I upload content weekly, and for some reason, people seem to like it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a lovely day.